Good evening, Bayan. In our pursuit of a truly just society here in the Philippines, we often talk about evidence. But, well, what happens when the rules for handling that evidence, even a tiny amount in a drug case, aren't followed exactly?
Hmm.
Could that mean someone accused of a serious crime walks free? Does sticking meticulously to legal rules sometimes seem to clash with fighting dangerous drugs?
It's a tough balance, and it raises questions about what we value more, due process or the drug war outcome.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into a Supreme Court case that really forces us to grapple with this very dilemma.
We are. We're looking at People of the Philippines versus Roseline Kasan Atilano and Henry Llacer. That's GR number 238334, decided back on July 3, 2019.
Right. And like you said, it involved what seems like a small amount of drugs, but the ruling, well, it kicked off some major legal discussion.
It really did. It highlighted just how crucial procedure is, especially in these types of cases.
So our mission today is to unpack this SC decision for you.
Hmm.
We want to get into the specifics, understand the procedural missteps that led to the acquittal, and shed light on the key legal ideas this case brings up.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Where does the story begin?
It starts back on December 10th, 2015, in a Makati city.
Okay.
Roseline Kasan and Henry Llacer were arrested by officers from the Makati Police Station's anti-drug unit, the state's OTG.
And why were they targeted? Was there prior intelligence?
Yes, the arrest stemmed from a tip. A confidential informant told police about two individuals, aliases Bacala and Penny, allegedly involved in drug dealing in Barangay Olympia.
Ah, so the classic buy-bust operation setup.
Exactly. SPO1 Mike Lester Passis went undercover as the buyer. He had a marked P500 bill ready.
Okay.
According to the police account, Kasan, who they identified as Penny, asked how much shabu Passis wanted.
And Llacer. Bacala.
Llacer then allegedly handed over a small plastic sachet containing 0.18 gram of methamphetamine hydrochloride, or shabu, to the officer.
Right. And was anything else found?
Yes. After that supposed transaction, they frisked Llacer, and police say they found another sachet on him, this one with 0.09 gram of the same substance.
Okay, so arrest made, drugs allegedly seized. This is where procedure becomes absolutely critical, right? The handling of the evidence.
Absolutely. The law is very clear here. Section 21 of the Dangerous Drugs Act, RA 9165, it mandates immediate marking, inventory, and photographing of the seized items.
Right there at the place of arrest, in the presence of the accused.
Ideally, yes. That's the standard. To preserve the integrity of the evidence from square one, show it hasn't been touched or swapped.
But, reading between the lines here, that's not quite what happened.
Correct. There was a deviation. Kasan and Llacer, along with the seized items, were taken first to the Barangay Hall in Barangay Olympia.
Okay, the place of the alleged crime.
But apparently, no barangay official was available there at that moment. So they moved everyone and everything to a different barangay hall, Barangay West Pembo.
A different location. And how long after the arrest did this happen?
The records state it was about 2 hours later, and the inventory and photographing finally took place there at West Pembo.
2 hours later, different location. And who witnessed this inventory?
Only one witness was present. Barangay Kagawad Rodrigo Neri. Photographs were taken there too.
Just one witness. Okay, that sounds like another potential issue brewing. We'll probably come back to that. So what happened after the inventory at West Pembo?
After that, the seized items went to the case investigator, PO3 Roque Carlo Paredes II. He then turned them over to the crime laboratory for chemical analysis.
Standard procedure there. And the accused, Kasan and Llacer.
They pleaded not guilty to the illegal sale charge for both, and Llacer also pleaded not guilty to a separate charge of illegal possession for that second sachet.
And their defense?
They claimed it was a frame-up. They actually said they were arrested the day before, December 9th, not the 10th, and that the police tried to extort money from them.
A very different version of events. So the trial court, the RTC, had to weigh the police account against the defense's claims and, crucially, examine those procedural steps. What did they decide?
The regional trial court in Makati, Branch 65, found both Kasan and Llacer guilty of the illegal sale.
And the sentence.
Life imprisonment, plus a P500,000 fine each.
Wow. And Llacer's possession charge?
Also found guilty on that. He got an additional sentence of 12 years, and one day up to 14 years and 8 months, plus another P300,000 fine.
So the RTC basically accepted the prosecution's version, believed the buy-bust was valid, and the evidence chain was intact.
Yes, the RTC held that the prosecution proved its case, including, importantly, that the integrity of the drugs was preserved. They felt there was substantial compliance with the rules.
Okay, so conviction at the first level. Did they appeal?
They did. They went to the Court of Appeals.
And what was the CA's take on it? Did they see any problems with the procedure?
The Court of Appeals actually affirmed the RTC's decision. They agreed with the trial court.
So they also believed the buy-bust was legitimate.
Yes, and they upheld the finding that there was substantial compliance with the chain of custody rule. Even if there were minor deviations, they felt the core requirements were met well enough.
So 2 courts finding them guilty. That brings us to the final stop, the Supreme Court. What was the core legal question they had to tackle?
The big question for the Supreme Court was pretty focused. Did the Court of Appeals make a mistake in upholding the conviction despite these alleged problems with following the chain of custody procedures for the drugs?
Right. Were those procedural issues, the delay, the location change, the single witness, were they significant enough to create reasonable doubt?
Precisely. Could the conviction stand, given those specific circumstances? And this is where, as you said, the legal details become so important.
So what was the final word from the Supreme Court, the decision that sparked all this discussion?
Well, the Supreme Court reversed the Court of Appeals. They threw out the conviction and acquitted both Roseline, Kasan, and Henry Llacer.
Acquitted. Okay, that's a major turnaround from the lower courts. What was their reasoning?
They really hammered home the point about the corpus delicti in drug cases, the drug itself.
The body of the crime.
Exactly. The prosecution must prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the substance shown in court is the very same substance seized from the accused. And that proof relies entirely on an unbroken chain of custody.
An unbroken chain. And the SE found breaks in this case.
Oh, yes. Several critical ones. First, that failure to immediately mark, inventory, and photograph the items right there at the arrest scene.
The 2-hour delay and the move to Barangay West Pimbo.
Correct. The court said that created a major gap, a window where evidence tampering or substitution could have happened, and the police excuse of security reasons. The SE found it flimsy because no specifics were given.
Right. Just saying security reasons isn't enough justification for ignoring the law's requirements. What else?
Second, the witness issue. Remember, only the barangay Kagawad was present during the inventory. Well, RA 9165, especially as amended by RA 10640, is very specific. It requires an elected public official, which they had, and a representative from the National Prosecution Service, or the media.
Ah, so they were missing that second required witness, the MPS rep or media.
Exactly. And the prosecution didn't offer a valid reason why that second witness wasn't there. That was another significant breach.
Okay, so immediate marking inventory fail, witness requirement fail, anything else in the chain?
Yes, there were issues later on, too. The stipulation about the forensic chemist's testimony.
What was wrong with that? Usually stipulations simplify things.
They do, but this one was, well, deficient. It didn't explicitly state that the chemist received the evidence properly marked, sealed, and intact. Nor did it confirm that the chemist resealed it after testing and put their own markings on it. So another gap in documenting the evidence handling, this time at the lab stage.
So uncertainty about its condition going into and coming out of the lab analysis.
Precisely. And there was one final break in the chain identified by the court.
What was it?
There was simply no testimony, none at all, explaining how the drug evidence got from the crime lab to the trial court for presentation.
Wow. The final link was just missing. No record of that transfer.
None presented. So the court had no way of knowing how that evidence was handled during that crucial final step before being presented in court.
It sounds like a series of significant procedural failures, not just minor hiccups.
That's exactly how the Supreme Court saw it. They pointed back to earlier cases, like People v. Ramirez, emphasizing how vital that immediate marking is.
Right. And what about the idea of substantial compliance that the lower courts mentioned? RA 10640 does allow some flexibility, doesn't it?
It does. If there are justifiable grounds for deviating from the procedure, and if the prosecution proves that the integrity and evidentiary value of the evidence were still preserved despite the deviation.
The so-called saving clause.
Right. But the SC said it didn't apply here. The prosecution didn't offer good enough reasons for the deviations, especially the missing witness and the initial delay. And because there were multiple breaches, the court felt the integrity wasn't guaranteed. There's too much uncertainty.
So the repeated lapses undermined any claim of substantial compliance.
Correct. And that relates to the final point about the presumption of regularity.
Ah, yes, the idea that we generally assume police officers do their jobs properly.
The court acknowledged that presumption exists, but stressed it's disputable. It can be overturned by evidence to the contrary.
And in this case, the evidence of the broken chain of custody was enough to overturn it.
Yes. The clear breaches of procedure created reasonable doubt about whether the drugs presented in court were truly the ones seized. And with reasonable doubt, acquittal is required.
Which led to the order for their immediate release.
Exactly.
This ruling definitely sends a powerful message about procedural safeguards. So looking forward, what are the implications here in the Philippines? How might this affect police work in drug cases?
Well, it's a strong reminder, isn't it? For police, for prosecutors. Strict adherence to Section 21 isn't optional if you want a conviction to stick.
It really highlights the need for meticulous work from the moment of arrest. Training, checklists, maybe?
Could be. Definitely a renewed focus on getting that marking, inventory, photography done immediately on site with all the required witnesses present. No shortcuts, no vague excuses.
And for the prosecution, they need to be ready to prove every single link in that chain, explaining any deviation thoroughly.
Absolutely. It reinforces that due process protecting individual rights. It's not secondary to the goal of fighting crime. They have to go hand in hand.
A critical balance. So for you listening, what are your thoughts on this? Does this decision strike the right balance? Which part of the chain of custody do you think is the most vital?
Let us know in the comments. And please hit that favorite button if this deep dive gave you some food for thought.
And just to quickly recap the key legal principles highlighted by this case.
First, chain of custody. That unbroken record showing who handled the evidence from seizure to court, essential for proving it's the same stuff.
Second, corpus delicti in drug cases. The drug itself, its identity and integrity must be proven beyond reasonable doubt.
Third, presumption of regularity. The idea officers act properly, but it's not absolute. It could be rebutted by evidence of procedural errors, like we saw here.
And fourth, substantial compliance with Section 21. Yes, there's a saving clause, but only for justifiable deviations where evidence integrity is proven to be preserved. Multiple unexplained breaches don't cut it.
Crucial doctrines to understand. If you want to keep digging into significant legal cases and understand their real-world impact, make sure you subscribe to the deep dive.
We break down the complex details and help you connect the dots.
Join our community of informed listeners. Subscribe today.